a madman? Are you paranoid? Are you an entrepreneur?
All of the above.
Big mountains, rivers, sky. I'm gonna be all the way out there, all the way fucking out there, just getting out of this sick society.
Society!
Society, man!
Society!
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 Society! You know, it's society!
Hello and welcome to the Lot to Unpack Here podcast. I'm Lee, also known as Bewildered Bee, and with me I have Alice.
Hi, I'm Alice Shelley Forbes. You can find me at Rebel Gender on Twitter if you have any complaints of my awesome historical opinions that I will win with facts and logic.
Yeah, and Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex, aka Obscuricom. I have a vacuum cleaner now, and that's the standard of living right now. My standards have been lowered so much that's now a high point of my week.
Nice. Alright, we've got a lot to get into today, a lot to unpack, if you will, because this is the movie episode. We're gonna be talking about 3 different movies today, which are all bad and or weird in their own unique ways. Alex, you wanna start us off?
Okay, I'm going to talk about Into the Wild. Probably my most hated movie. I hate this movie. It's one of those unpopular opinions. I have a lot of movies that I hate that for some reason I'm in the minority. I mean, you've seen this, listeners, with me being right about the Joker movie and everyone
No,
else
you're wrong
being
about
wrong
the Joker
about it.
movie.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, science proves it. The Joker movie sucked, and for some
Joker
reason, no
was
one
good.
realizes this. No one
Joker was
realizes
good.
it.
I'll stand by this.
Well, I guess it's the same with like Into the Wild. Like the problem is that I have with it, and I think why a lot of people like it is that it's not a badly made film. It's actually a really well directed film, and visually it's beautiful. You could happily put it on in the background, and it's got some nice scenes of sunsets and trees and horses running around, beach scenes, and it is kind of like What I Did on My Summer Holidays, the movie, you know? And it's like nothing really happens for a long periods of the film. It's just like there's even one moment which is just like I just visually I just visibly groan where it's a slow motion scene where the main character is taking a makeshift shower, and this scene lasts for like 1.5 minutes, and it's just like it's all in slow motion. It's like, oh, look at the pretty water on 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 Emil's face, as it goes down into his Emil Hirsch, his name is the guy who plays
Right.
the protagonist. It's like look at him, in the wild with water dripping on his abs, and this goes on for fucking ever. And it's like, yeah, I mean, yes, that's pretty, but this is like a screensaver for someone's laptop. This isn't like a movie. But I do think that these visuals kind of blind people to how hollow and bullshit this film is. And that's the only reason I can explain why so many people gave it a pass and why it got so many awards. This thing won awards, during the time. It was like considered one of the best pictures that came
Really?
out that year. Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
It was like
it was alright. It was alright. It was good-ish. I say not knowing the inaccuracies of it, just having like
it's
seen
even
it.
worse than I initially thought because it pissed me off in the beginning because it had a lot of things that without knowing the context at the time, I thought was kind of bullshit. But now knowing more about it and having read more of the book and everything around the actual story it's based on, it's kind of unforgivable.
Yeah, that's
I like,
exactly how I feel about my movie as well, the one I'm gonna be doing. So I get that.
yeah. I'll go right into it. I think I'll
Can
get.
I just mention I saw this movie in I think it was English class, and it was I don't know why we watched it. The only reason I can think of is that the English teacher liked it. It didn't really have anything to do with anything.
Either that or they had a hangover.
My
That
English teacher has the most average film taste because the 2 movies she showed us was Into the Wild and Suffragette, which is an extremely average movie, maybe even below
Oh,
average. It's very
oh,
boring.
we'll get to that someday.
Oh, you have
Like,
seen it?
anyway,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
not good.
I mean, the way that this film was recommended to me as well was the most in retrospect is the funniest way it could be recommended. I used to like have an unpaid internship with this artist that I was trying to get work experience from, and he was like a hippy dippy arsehole who now in retrospect I realize he was exploiting the labor of teenagers for his shitty little art project which wasn't going anywhere. He was very nice. He was very nice, but we didn't get paid for all of the tracing we had to do for him. And he did give me some books, but I don't know. I was just a clueless asshole back then. And I didn't know when I was being exploited, whether I was just like, roping my friends into it. Because it's like, yeah, I could get some work experience and become a famous artist and stuff. And it's like, I was doing nothing. I was just tracing for this guy. Like that was it. And then just putting it up in a gallery and all free of charge. Yeah, all at my expense. And yeah, he actually did call me up later when he still wasn't doing very well years later, but I didn't return his call because it's like I actually turns out you should get paid for jobs.
Oh, what? Really? Shocking
Yeah,
revelation.
I know. It was news to me. And the thing was that he recommended the movie to me because he was sort of like, "But man, you got to watch this. You got to watch this. It will change your life." I I was like, "Wow, really?" And, like, when I watched it, that was, like, the first thing because like, I was like, "Okay, well, he clearly thinks highly of this movie." And I watched it, and I'm like, "Maybe this guy is full of shit.
Yeah.
Maybe this guy is actually a pretentious dick." But it's like, that's the thing is, that's the audience for this movie. It's like,
Yeah.
artists with, more yeah, with more art than sense.
Changing someone's life is extremely, like, high praise. I don't know if even, like, my favorite movies have changed my life. Like, that is really high praise for fucking Into the
I
Wild.
will say one movie that changed. I didn't really change my life, but it changed my perspective and got me through a hard period, which was Adaptation, which is a Nicolas Cage movie. As a palate cleanser for the movies we're gonna talk about, I recommend Adaptation to people because that I don't know if it was just the time and the place that I watched it, but it just really emotionally affected me. It was when I was going through a very difficult time in my life, when I was in Dubai and I was just coming to terms with being trans and, just not in a nice place and just really feeling hot all of the time. But they showed Adaptation on the telly and I watched it and I legit cried, you know,
Oh,
sadness, but also happiness. And also like, it's a very funny film as well. Nicolas Cage plays his own twin who's more
oh,
successful
shit.
than he is.
Oh,
And
that
that
sounds
that
cool,
is
actually.
That's yeah, it's legit a great movie, and I recommend that everyone see it. It may not be to everyone's taste because it is a very strange movie, but I that is the closest thing to having a life-changing movie, quote unquote.
So, I guess since we're doing life-changing movies, I had the life-changing movie of Let Him Have It.
Oh God,
I
yeah.
don't think I've heard of that.
So, it's about one of the last hangings in Britain, and basically, it's about how they absolutely botched it, and absolutely innocent man who
Oh, that
was
sounds.
completely innocent. Um, and that changed like my entire point of view on
Oh, sure.
like that method of like justice.
Yeah.
It
Um,
The
yeah.
case itself like changed opinions in Britain. I really think that should be required watching for anybody on the fence. Yeah, it's just heartbreaking and brutal that, this poor kid who just got in the wrong place at the wrong time was just made to, suffer like, like a subhuman, just for the sake of justice or showing a hard hand. It's like, yeah, I can see why that's a very good choice, that why that changed your life because that is just a brilliant film. Anyway, this is like completely gone off track, as usual
Yeah,
for us.
anyway, into the one.
Into the Wild. You know what? You might as this is kind of the theme of Into the Wild because it goes on lots of random tangents that don't mean anything anyway. So, but we
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
do have a point to our things. We're actually
It's
expressing
very
things.
meta, yeah. It's actually very meta and very smart and not all messy and dumb.
Yes, we have a plan. This is actually a plan. All right, I'll start off with what I got written down because it's like much like the film itself, like it's all messy and jumbled and has no inherent meaning. All of my notes. So anyway, this is a story about Chris McCandless, who who when he was traveling named himself Alexander Supertramp. We'll call him Chris for the sake of brevity.
Oh no, I like Supertramp, so that's good.
I don't.
I
I
personally,
don't.
you can call him Chris. I'll be calling him Supertramp. I'm
No,
sorry.
and the worst part is, he had my name. He called himself Alex on these journeys. Like, you have any idea how much that messes me up? That this that this fucking Jesus self-insert is like calling himself my name. So I'll call him Chris for brevity because for the simple reason that that's what he called himself when he slipped up on social security numbers and to get money, and also that's what he called himself when he was calling for help when he was dying in the wilderness. More on that story later. Right. We shall call him Chris. His story is summed up eloquently by John Krakauer's, if I've got his name right.
Crack
Book
hours?
Krakauer.
Oh, okay.
Krakauer. Yeah. His book Into the Wild. It's summed up like so. In April 1992, a young man from a well-to-do East Coast family hitchhiked to Alaska and walked alone into the wilderness north of Mount McKinley. 4 months later, his decomposed body was found by a party of moose hunters. Okay, so you want to talk about a film, Alice? Your one next. That's pretty much all there is to it.
So basically,
Next
yeah, he
segment.
walked into the forest and then got owned by
That's it.
nature's forces.
That's it. That's the whole story. I mean, the movie manages to make way more of the fiction of that, but that's basically the story. That shouldn't have been analyzed in any way outside of that because it caused so much trouble afterwards, in my opinion. But for some reason, his story got picked up by John Krakauer, who first wrote an article about it, about his tragic death, and it's still, I think, one of the most popular articles on Outside magazine. And then he went on and padded it out some more into the whole book Into the Wild. Now, I will say this about the book. It's not as bad as the film. In fact, it's much better than the film, but it still falls into things that I find incredibly annoying, which will become apparent later. But the main thing is that the main crux of the thing is to pad it out some more and gain more information on him. And it's still kind of reveres Chris McCandless for what he did rather than, be overtly critical of him. It still criticizes him, but it still kind of couches, his whole journey as something special and something kind of deep.
Yeah.
The film really lays into that side of it. Just really leans in, just skips over a lot of the critical stuff. And it's what really pisses me off is the cottage industry of romanticizing Chris's death. It's come to represent something that's more spectacular and meaningful than it actually was. And you know what? I think that to actually express my annoyance with how this film represents this really tragic and brutal story of a man that went into the woods with no supplies, essentially, and no clue as to how to live, with his half-baked ideas and his many paperback novels. I'm going to break this rant down into chapters, like the movie
Oh.
does.
Nice.
Chapter 1, The Miracle of Birth.
Ugh.
That's my reaction when they actually do. I'm not kidding, folks. The movie does break it down into actual. The book does this as well, but it gets away with it because it's an actual book. You
Yeah.
shouldn't do this in a movie, okay?
It seems kind of lazy here. I agree.
It is. It's just, and it breaks it down into sort of like, him. It's like framing the movie as if, he's going on his own, road to Damascus, like he's aging so much in just 2 years. Because this all takes place over 2 years, pretty much. Like, this is a thing that you don't really get conveyed so much, is that it seems long because the movie's fucking. So it seems like a much longer time than it actually was, but it was just 2 years that he was going on these road adventures. And he was only in, the Alaskan wilderness for like, 2 months alive, and 4 months altogether, or so it's estimated. So basically they have chapters of like, and it's just like chapter 1 birth, chapter 2 adolescence, chapter 3 middle age, chapter 4 death, and yeah, it's pretentious, it's annoying. The first one we see.
I will defend some movies' right to use chapters, like if there's a good reason, like Requiem for a Dream with the 4 seasons works really well.
Well, yeah, because it's an actual theme.
Yeah.
It's an actual theme in the
theme.
movie.
And The Handmaiden also works really well with the chapters because she just like a narrative switch in perspective to it and reveals like new information. And like those, in those movies, there's like good reasons to use the chapter split. And this, there's not. It's just a lazy like way to get some structure here.
Yeah, it not only does this, very lazy, very pretentious way of couching the film, by opening it in chapters. It also opens with a quote from Lord Byron, and I hate that. Like throughout the book as well, each chapter begins with a quote, but that's kind of, I mean, that's pretentious as fuck too. But
Alex, can you tell us? Can you tell us the Lord Byron quote?
The Lord Byron quote. You may know it. Yeah. The quote is, "There is a pleasure in the pathless woods.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
There is a rapture on the lonely shore. There is society where none intrudes by the deep sea and the music in its roar. I love not man the less, but nature more."
Wait, did
That's
you
from the.
do that from memory?
No, I've got it written down here.
Okay,
I know.
Yeah.
No, I'm just very, very well spoken.
Yeah.
No, that's a poem called "There Is a Pleasure in the Pathless Woods," where Byron is singing the praises of nature and being alone within it and traveling along no predetermined trail and finding beauty in it. And that's nice. Chris McCandless was like a massive fan of, the old school classics, like John, Thoreau, Jack London, and all that kind of stuff, and Charles Dickens. But yeah, I don't think he was a Byron fan. Like, I mean, I'm sure he would have liked it, but there's really nothing in the book, Into the Wild, that indicates that he went. It doesn't even open with a Byron quote. That's the thing. I would understand if they opened with that quote if it was in the book, because God knows every single fucking chapter in this book, it has like some fucking quote from some old novel that Chris was reading at the time. And that's like, there's a point to that because Chris was constantly reading these books and constantly projecting himself onto them and thinking, yeah, I could do that. I could make this work of fiction a reality.
I mean,
But
that seems like a good, like, reasonable explanation to have those quotes in the book, at least. But the movie having a quote from a book he didn't even read seems dumb. Like, they didn't get the point of why it was in the book.
Exactly, and it's like, I guess it's just that they didn't want to like put a Jack London quote or anything, because like, because that comes in later and they quote Jack London, and it sort of goes against the thesis of that movie. I think they just wanted to open with a more positive sounding quote about going alone in the woods.
Taking something from shit. What's his wild book called? No, I forget.
What was it? Fucking White Fang or some shit.
No, not the other one. The Call of the Wild. Call of the Wild. That's it.
Call of the Wild. Yeah.
Yeah, Call of the Wild is pretty much like the opposite book. Like, it's about this dog who who like gets dragged into the wild and has to like live there, and just everything is fucking miserable and the wild sucks and everyone the dog meets is awful, and it just gets fucking destroyed and broken down throughout the book. And it's not a very positive quote to open on something from that.
Crazy thing, because like there are a lot of quotes about that, because Chris, the real life Chris, he'd read these books over and over again. They're like, that was part of building into his fantasy of living in the wild, but it's like he read them but he clearly didn't understand them,
Yeah,
because
I mean,
like a lot of these books, they're like, living in the wild is fucking horrible.
yeah, it was like, to call it the wild was fucking horrifying. I remember crying when I read that as a teen.
Jeez.
It's horrifying, it's horrible, and I can't imagine reading that and being like, oh yeah, the wild sound cool, I should go there.
I'm sure that like if he were alive today, he would like misunderstand The Sopranos and Breaking Bad as well. Like, oh, Skylar's such a bitch.
Yeah.
Ugh, Heisenberg's the hero.
He'd be one of those guys. Like, yeah, you just gotta do what you gotta do, and you gotta hide the gun in the bathroom, and you gotta shoot someone. That's how you become a baller. That's cool behavior.
I mean, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but I 100% think that that's exactly what he would be like if these shows existed in his time. Oh, but anyway, that drugs, bisexual drug-fueled quotes aside, uh, we then cut to Chris McCandless's grief-stricken mother, who has a nightmare about her son, implying that she knows something horrible has happened to him via a psychic presence, presumably. More on that story later. Then after this kind of a bit troublesome scene, we jump cut to scenes of Chris traveling through the Yukon. And it's all very pretty and well filmed. And it's like da, 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 happy journeys, nothing bad can happen. And we know from the story, if you know anything about it, that he is, traveling directly to his death at this point. This is like
Yeah.
towards the end of his journey, and he's writing the final postcard that he sent to a friend before he set up camp. And or the writing of that postcard is just scattered across the screen in a very sort of semi-creative way, I guess. You can't really. It's just sort of like, yeah, I'm going into the wild, and it goes into the screen, and it's like, yeah, very on the nose, very like, yeah, this is the title of the movie. That's where he is going. See. Um, there's lots of wide angle nature shots, full close-ups of the protagonist, soulful guitar soundtrack. Fun fact, the whole soundtrack to this film is a studio album made specifically for Into the Wild, and I was sung and selected by none other than the lead singer of Pearl Jam, Eddie
Oh,
Vedder.
what?
Yeah,
Oh,
the lead
okay.
singer. Yeah, apparently he agreed to do the soundtrack without knowing anything about the movie, and like apparently in real life he is a staunch environmentalist. It was his first solo album, and it was insanely popular. And he's a Green Party voter and a Bernie Sanders supporter. Pearl
Oh, that's
Jam is
cool.
also, yeah. He's like, I think that's one of the reasons why he agreed to. He gels so well, because he's very much into nature, and thus like does a good soundtrack for all of these nature shots. Pearl Jam is also a slang term for cum, and his band is named
Oh.
after ejaculate, which is the perfect match for this wanky film. So I think that it's like it. All I'm saying is a match made in heaven. And another reason why I think that people really like this movie is because the soundtrack is really good, and his single "Hard Sun" from it is like, I think it's like fucking platinum or something. It's like it still gets plays on the radio, and it's like, yeah, no context about the movie, it is a good song. It's just kind of weirdly upbeat for a story about a guy who eventually dies of starvation. So
I mean, like I am reminded of the quote. What is it? Music is like 70% of the movie.
well, I think it's 70% of the movie, and the other 30% is just look at the trees. Look at the
Yeah.
trees. Aren't the trees pretty? Look at the trees. Oh, anyway, after his happy little hitchhiking sequence, we cut to Chris getting dropped off by a mysterious trucker who gives him a pair of waterproof boots and his phone number. If you make it out alive, give me a call, he says as he hands over the boots. He watches stoically from the pickup truck as Chris walks into the wild.
Bruh.
and into the
That's it. That's the
ominously.
title. To Leonardo
Into the
DiCaprio pointing at screen.jpg.
Yeah, it just walking, and there's just loads of ominous wind blowing as he walks into the wild. And interesting fact that I found out recently: the driver that drops him off is Jim Gallion, or Galian. I think I'll just call him Jim. He is the actual Alaskan who picked up the real Chris McCandless,
Oh,
and
okay.
he plays
Cool.
himself in the movie.
Oh,
Another
shit.
fun,
That's
yeah,
meta.
another fun fact: that scene was not at all like his experience with the real Chris McCandless. It's complete bullshit. The real Chris McCandless was way more of a smug prick to him. And the movie leaves out that Jim spent the whole 2-hour car journey from Fairbanks to the edge of Denlani Park trying to explain to Chris that it wasn't a good idea to go into the wild. And Chris would just reply with, "Shut up, Jim." At every legitimate
shit.
criticism.
Nice.
And this is the start of the like there's no forgetting. It's like, oh, this was lost in, the novel, that no, it's right there in the beginning of the novel Into the Wild, this whole thing that makes you feel like, I mean, I know why they cut it out, because it makes Chris out to be a fucking prick, which he is. And
That's
less
not good for
sympathetic.
storytelling.
I mean, it could be like having a protagonist who's an asshole does like sometimes work if you do as well.
Yeah, that's not the kind of movie they're trying to make, and it's like,
Yeah.
and he's really a prick in this. Like Jim observes that Chris was incredibly underprepared in both equipment and experience, and Chris didn't have a compass, he didn't have an axe, he only carried like a 10-pound bag of rice for food that was supposed to last him potentially for months. He only had a 22 caliber rifle, which is a shit rifle that barely kills small game, let alone large game like moose, which he would need to shoot in order to survive. More on that story later. And his clothes were not crafted to withstand the average Alaskan wild winter. So that's why he gave him his boots, because his boots that he was wearing were cheap and not waterproof. So Jim, hoping that this mad prick would at least not get frostbite or foot rot in the wild, just gave him his own boots. Because he just felt like this guy was absolutely mad and underprepared. And Jim repeatedly tried to dissuade him from going over the 2 hours, like presenting very sensible reasons why he shouldn't do what he's going to do. And the best part is that Chris was asking quite good questions, like what kind of small game lives in the area, what are good berries to eat, things that you should know before embarking on a journey, which he's just asking a random stranger now. Like,
Oh
and
my god.
from that, Jim deduces that he's not an insane homeless person, but he is a thoughtful young man, but he still wants to scare this kid from, dying, because, he still thinks he's very naive. So any other input that Jim gives him is just shot down instantly. Like, he tries to scare Chris by telling him about the bear attacks and how they're everywhere and they eat people. And Chris is like, I'll just climb a tree. Like, that's a sufficient plan against fucking bears. And then Jim asks Chris whether he has a hunting license, and Chris says, how I feed myself is none of the government's business. Fuck their
Oh my
stupid
god,
rules.
he's a libertarian. Oh no.
Yeah, this makes so much more sense.
What next? Do I need a license to toast my bread?
If the story opened like this, like, I think a lot of people would have walked out saying, "Yeah, you know what? I hope this fucker dies, this piece of shit." Like, and like, and after that, it's sort of like Jim asks, like, "Is there anybody that knows where you're going so that you can sound the alarm if anything goes wrong?" And Chris is like, "I won't run into anything I can't deal with on my own."
Yeah, fucking sure.
Yeah, you sure about that, Chris? And Jim, oh my god, Jim is the fucking MVP, I gotta say. Jim even offered to drive Chris to town, buy him all of the gear he needs with his own money, and then drive him back to where Chris
Oh,
wants to go so he's
wow.
better prepared. But Chris is like, nah, I'm good, Jim. Don't worry
Oh my
about it. I'm
god, what
fine
a
with my
fucking
10-pound
asshole.
bag of rice, no axe, no compass, and my shitty, shitty gas station map that I've been carrying around with me for like the past 50 miles.
Jim,
I'm not kidding.
Jim, I gotta say, look, you don't know nothing. I'm about to do what's called a pro gamer move. Now, I'm going to go into the forest. I'm going to whack a bear. And then I'll be PogChamp. Is it too soon to say that I'm PogChamp?
Very much. I'm afraid Chris never became PogChamp in the
Oh,
wild.
no.
And isn't that the most tragic revelation of all?
Yeah. Oh, anyway, Chris
He
had
can't be
every.
I'm sorry, I thought of a bad joke. He can't be PogChamp, but he can be PodChamp. As if he's on the podcast. That's bad, I know.
Let
Yeah,
that on the
sorry.
cutting room floor. That's not getting in.
It might
Yeah,
be.
but
Yeah.
like he's
It
gonna be
might be if I feel
PogChamp.
like embarrassing myself particularly much.
It's PogChamp.
PogChamp, yeah.
Well, he didn't die in a bog technically, but there were bogs near him, so that kind of works.
Fuck, that's a better joke than mine. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll as the in the rank of bad jokes, that ranks a bit higher than Lee's. I will say
Oh,
it's still
definitely.
They're still bad jokes.
No, it's good. I endorse PogChamp. PogChamp's a good joke.
Oh, anyway, look. Long story short, Chris had every opportunity handed to him by this guy, like to be given all the need for things that probably would have helped him survive, or at least at least like helped him survive through the worst of it. But he just turned it down like a petulant child. And it's worth noting that the line he actually said to Chris was, "If you make it out alive, give me a call and I'll tell you how to get the boots back to me," which is much less
Oh
stoic
my
and more
god.
like,
Oh, that's great.
yeah. And yeah, it's so great, like thinking like, yeah, just get the boots back to me. Okay. It's not like, yeah, here are your boots. I'm gonna gift to you my Jesus child. Like the movie
They should
just
have left
keeps.
that in the movie. That's great, actually. That's an amazing line.
And it's from the guy who actually said it. This is what pisses me off the most. Like they focus on these like meaningless, realistic details. Like they have like the real Jim that drops him off, but he doesn't say anything he actually said. And like Emil Hirsch, who plays Chris McCandless, as a very pretty version of him, I gotta say, like he has the same watch that Chris McCandless wore, and it was given to him as a gift, and he wears it throughout the film, and it's like, "Oh, wow, that's a real attention to detail." It's like, it doesn't matter. These details are irrelevant. Like, it doesn't tell the story. It doesn't represent anything real. You're just telling lies while having some real effects as window dressing. It
Yeah.
drives me up the wall, like, these things. Like, they put so much effort into these tiny, insignificant bullshit details and just completely coated over the real story. And it's just in that one scene that perfectly illustrates, what the film does, forever in its unquote unquote realism. Oh, anyway, I'll tell you. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you about the moose scene, since I might forget about it. Since we're on the moose
What
scene.
what gun was it, Alex? I'm really
22
curious.
caliber, I think Alex
Yeah,
said.
yeah, 22 caliber. He did manage to take down a moose,
Oh,
and that's
shit.
funny. Well, it's not as good as it was with a shitty rifle, and it was a hard kill. And it's not really mentioned in the movie that this was actually a really shitty rifle to like kill things with. So it's just like a rifle, and there's a scene in the beginning where he's starting out and like he decides to kill a moose like really confidently, but he sees the little baby moose behind the mother, and it's like, "Oh no, I can't do that. Oh, baby moose, we can't do that. I'll just kill some squirrels instead." And then when he's just getting much hungrier later on, he just like deliriously kills a moose, and it's a nice big moose. And it's like, "Oh yeah, finally, I'm gonna fucking eat it. I'm gonna fucking eat for days." And yeah, he doesn't manage to preserve it at all. Like, because
So nice.
this is the problem with killing big game. Like, he tried to smoke it, like create a fire underneath it and smoke the meat to preserve it, but the flies got to it like immediately, and it just got rotten within a day. Like, it was just inedible. And like the whole scene is kind of horrific in the film. Like, it's not there. Like, he's sort of losing his mind and like reenacting like an argument between his father, his mother, and his sister at the barbecue because he's like losing his mind. If the movie was more like that, I would understand it a bit better, and it might be a better movie because it's like he's clearly losing it because he's so out of his depth, and he's not only just expended all of this energy on killing this moose, he can't even reap the rewards of it, and he just leaves it to the wolves to eat in the end. And apparently that is a real moose that they found dead by the side of the road,
Oh,
and it's a roadkill moose, and he's carving up a real moose to try and smoke it, and there's real maggots, and it's real stink, and it's
no,
real
shit.
awful. Yeah, so that's an interesting bit of filmmaking. I would say it's like they don't stick the landing, and it's like, yeah, I would just say the moose scene is just like, again, I wish the movie would like focus on that element rather than all the bullshit, Jesus
Yeah,
stand-in movie.
I remember liking the scene where he hallucinates and goes crazy. I thought that was a good scene. I remember liking that one.
That's like that. I've got some problems with that last scene as well. I got last problems with that. I will get to
Oh,
those
okay.
later for the grand finale. I got so many problems. I mean, yeah, I do like the bits where he is going kind of fucking crazy. Like, and he's going like like it's just a descent into madness, not only because it's like some of the more interesting parts of the film because something fucking happens. Like there's just so
Yeah.
much filler in this movie of like pretty nature shots and like characters that don't fucking go anywhere. That to actually have him like just like fire his gun aimlessly into the wilderness going, "Where are the animals?" It's generally a delight to behold. And again, I shouldn't say it like that because it is just really sort of horrible. This, starving to death, like through your own hubris, is not a pleasant thing to watch. And I shouldn't be laughing at it, but the movie does such a poor job of making me feel things for this character. It's just, and even I feel even less sympathy knowing more about the real life Chris McCandless. That it just kind of gets lost on me.
Alice, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, none of you have had to get skin off bones using bleach and then get the smell straight into your nostrils, and it shows.
Okay, for the uninitiated,
I don't think anyone's uninitiated at this point.
what if this is someone's first podcast? Like everyone's just gonna think Alice is a serial killer by what she just said.
What? Even if you provide context, no, because you said that, I'm gonna leave the context out of it and let people just think whatever they want. I'm providing no context for that. I'm actually editing out context for that, actually. I want serial killer Alice to be a thing.
See, Alice would have survived in the wild.
All you need, just get some bleach. You got a nice skull collection. And it's you can go into the city dressed up with in full skull, and then it's I know how to survive out here. You're all weak.
Welcome to Hannibal's survival show.
Hannibal's survival show.
Surviving in the wild with Hannibal Lecter. Well, you won't be surviving in the wild with Hannibal Lecter. I mean, you are his food source.
Yeah.
You don't have to kill a moose. You're right there. Oh, anyway, we got off track with mooses and the dark secrets of Alice. So I'll go on to the next bit of things that piss me off about Into the Wild and the reality seeping in. Chris drops this little tidbit of information like it's not a massive problem. He says he's afraid of water.
Oh,
and that he almost drowned in a canoe when he was paddling to Mexico in a storm. Now, that is a very interesting bit of information in the first few pages of the book because it was not only left out of the film, but it was left out to make way for the film later writing an arc for Chris where he gets over his fear of water through positive thinking early on, and he braves the rapids of Mexico. It's more of an exciting kayak adventure. By the way, he doesn't go in a canoe in the film. He goes in a kayak. I don't know why they changed that. They changed weird things.
It's a weirdly specific thing to change.
What? Why not a canoe? A canoe.
The director has a very specific fear of canoes.
I mean, the director was Sean Penn, and Sean Penn is just.
Oh, you're right.
Yes,
it was. Oh yeah, it was. I forgot about that. It was.
I don't actually. I don't actually know the drama surrounding Sean Penn. Like,
It's
can
a
someone
lot.
explain?
So
Like,
I remember
briefly.
learning about the one point, but I've like blocked it out at this point because it was like too much. It was a lot.
he's an extremely crazy, incredibly violent man with terrible opinions, is all I'll say about it. Like,
Yeah, that's a different segment. That's a different episode.
that's a
entirely.
different segment. We'll get to that at some point. But yeah, apparently he doesn't like canoes, and fuck canoes, I guess. He puts Chris in a kayak instead, and yeah, it makes it less like it portrays it less like a near death experience that traumatizes Chris into a more sort of fun kayak adventure where it's like, oh, very very dangerous, but like, oh, great story to tell. But it's like, yeah, clearly it wasn't like that, you know. So another bit of important context that's missing from the film. Chapter 2, Awkward Adolescence. Now, this piece of garbage has to justify itself calling itself a biopic somehow. So there are some details of the real story that do make it into the film, but it's arranged in such a way that make it a more watchable film and Chris a more likable protagonist. Uh, it begins with Chris graduating with a degree in history and anthropology at Emory University. And you can tell that he's an eccentric lad because he does a running jump to collect his degree. Oh, what a scamp, what a rebel. That didn't actually happen in reality, but they have to make this scene interesting somehow, so they make Emil do a little jump. And yeah. After that, yeah, it leaves out a lot of like the high school years in which he's a captain of the cross country team, and he would say weird, pretentious, foreshadowy shit like telling his teammates to treat running as a spiritual exercise, in
Oh
which
my
they were,
god!
and I quote, running against the forces of darkness, all the evil in the
Fuck's sake.
world, all the hatred. And it only just implies the monk-like living that he made for himself in college. Like, he was well liked, and he was even like wrote for the student paper, and was considered, eccentric, but not like weirdly so. Like, that
How is
weird
that not
quotes he does.
weird? How is that not weirdly eccentric? I'm sorry, that
It's
is very
it's it's
weird.
it's Emory University. It's for rich kids. Let's like how
Oh, all right.
it's just they thought, I was just going for a phase or something, but yeah, a lot of this stuff you will find is a cry for help that no one caught on to. A lot of what he says. Like, apparently he slept on just a mattress, despite being from an obscenely wealthy family. He kept very minimal possessions and it kept it in military order in his dorm. He was very much a massive fan of Jack London, Tolstoy, and Thoreau. He read a lot of Walden, and that's what made him happy. He retained a very high grade point average, so nobody really criticized it.
Sure.
Anyway, after graduation, he recites poetry about how unhappy his family is to his beloved sister, Kareen. And Kareen, narrates most of the film, even though she never said any of this stuff. It's like just quotes from the book, but it's said via Kareen. And that's kind of okay considering they had the closest relationship, it seems. And we'll get to Kareen later because there's some extra on her that we have yet to explore. But
Spicy.
well, I say spicy, it's a bit cold. uh, and basically from this, after this, he has the most stifling graduation dinner with his parents ever, and it's implied very heavily that they don't have a very happy relationship. And so the first thing he does afterwards is donate all his savings to Oxfam, and that totals $24,000. He then drives alone in his Nissan Datsun through California to Arizona. Then his car gets totaled by a sudden flash flood and is, completely unusable. Chris then randomly abandons the car in the desert after removing the license plates, burns all of his money in his wallet and all of his identity documents. He continues on foot and begins his new life as Alexander Supertramp, the homeless hiker, or Leather Tramp, as he's called later on. A lot of music from the 90s plays to remind us that this takes place in the 90s. Loads more pretty wide angles. And the film flicks between flashbacks of Chris on his journey, where he's part Jesus figure, part student film protagonist, where he just faffs around in nature and makes human connections, runs about horses for a bit. That's fun. I don't know where the horses come from, but they're there. Some
Hell.
of which
They come from hell.
what?
The horses will kill him.
What?
That's an oddly ominous statement.
They don't. They're friendly hossies.
No horses are friendly. Stop
I mean,
saying
are we
lies.
completely sure how he died? Like, are we completely sure Supertramp died?
So
It could have been a
are you
horse.
saying that this is a conspiracy theory where the horses that we see in the film trekked up to his abode in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness,
Yes.
like injected him with poison and then
Yes.
popped away? Yeah, to be fair, no one would expect that. I'll give you that. No one would
It's the
expect
perfect crime.
I mean, I personally don't think he died. I personally think he's still living his life as John McAfee.
that. Yeah, the real Geoff McAfee is dead in the Alaskan wilderness when he took his life. I mean, it doesn't fit together at all, but it makes about as much sense as some of the theories that
It's
came
very in
out.
character for John.
It's true. It's part of the John McAfee saga confirmed. Oh, anyway, the film, does flashbacks and, and also but goes forward to, his lead up to his inevitable death as well. And the film has to do this because it needs to keep the film rolling and like have a sort of consistent narrative in chapter form, but also like not bum people out long enough. Because I think that if it had like one half of it and being, relatively happy with nature scenes, everybody would have been happy, but then got really bummed out when it all goes horribly wrong. So
Oh,
they'd
that's
have
a
to
great
like
structure, though. I would have loved the film. I would have liked
I
it a
would
lot
have.
more if
I
it
think
did
it would have
that.
been a. I totally agree. I totally agree. That would be a much better film and much
Yeah.
truer to the actual book. Like, because it just opens up.
And
Like,
teaching a good lesson to people of don't go into the wild, kids.
that's not even like the lesson that it teaches is like, don't be a prick and go without all of the essential equipment and
Yeah.
don't tell anybody about where you're going. Because it literally, again, the film doesn't really lean into this as much because it does kind of like imply don't go in the woods a little bit, but it really would hammer it home that all of this would have been avoidable had he just got a fucking compass or if he just got a fucking map that worked or knew what the fuck he was doing, and he didn't.
I think it's confirmed in that ranking the shit survivalists we talk about that Varg was more well prepared than this guy. And that's
Hell
an
yeah.
incredibly low bar. Like he had a compass, he had like maps, he had a fucking computer, he had like a little what they called? Oh shit, what they called? Navigator device. Like
Oh yeah, GPS. Yeah.
GPS. He had a little GPS device. Like he had a bunch of shit, and he was incredibly underprepared as well. But this
I mean,
guy somehow even worse, way worse.
I mean, yeah, this is another thing. Like, I mean, it is kind of like in reading the book. I mean, it is sort of like just looking at it, you're just kind of thinking, no, please no. Like, this is the thing that the film doesn't create because it does like show a lot of people are giving Chris a lot of opportunities and a lot of love, but not for the right things. Like, just cutting out all of the things that Jim says in the lead up to doing it. Like, it's showing that, if he'd have just accepted the help, he could have stood a better chance. Like, there were many people willing to just give him the equipment.
Yeah.
And he turned it down because apparently that's, pussies have equipment, according to Chris. I probably would have called Varg a pussy, I think, for having a GPS.
Yeah.
We need someone to tell Chris that he's a massive wuss as well. We'll maybe get that sometime. Actually, we do have the Alaskan authorities who have very strong opinions about this story. Because believe it or not, people love the movie so much that they make the journey to the magic bus where Chris died. To the extent where it's caused such a problem for, rescuers in Alaska and like, park rangers. It's caused such a problem. They actually had to airlift the bus out this year to stop people visiting the bus and potentially dying or needing to be rescued just to go to this really specific location where this other asshole died. Like potentially thousands of people went to this location because of the movie. Like and like at least 15 people have died since the movie, got released. And it's really sad. Again, it's like there is a part of me like the Alaskan Wilderness Authority is sort of like, you people are fucking idiots. Like, what are you doing? Like the guy died. Did you not see the movie? Did you not see to the end? And it's hard for me to because it is still very heartbreaking that like they still they take the wrong lesson from the movie that you know the movie doesn't exactly make it easy because it still portrays dying in the wilderness as some kind of spiritual experience, which
Yeah.
is one of the reasons I hate this movie. So, and they take the wrong conclusions like, oh, Chris went alone. That's the reason why he went wrong. That's the reason why he died. If we go together, we'll stand a better chance of survival. And entire troops of tourists go together and have
Yeah,
to
and
either be
just end up
rescued.
Blair Witching themselves, just arguing with
Yeah.
friends, losing their equipment and dying in the woods.
I mean, those who aren't rescued, it's oh god, the saddest story. Again from Outside magazine because they're still profiting off, the Chris McCandless story, even the deaths that he inadvertently caused. It's the saddest fucking story. There was this newly married couple that decided that as part of their, honeymoon, they would try and trek to the magic bus, and yeah, they tried to ford the river together because together they could do it, right? I mean, one of the reasons said oh, she was a expert scuba diver, so she would have been prepared. I'm like, no, no, that doesn't follow at all, my dude. She doesn't have her scuba diving equipment, and it doesn't matter how good at scuba diving you are if you're fording a dangerous river with rocks that's going 100 miles
Yeah.
an hour. You're not going to survive, and she didn't. And it's like, on one hand, it's like, yeah, we're chuckling at it, haha, how silly. But at the same time, they fucking died for nothing, really,
Yeah,
just nothing at all.
in Sean Penn's Mystic River.
Yeah, they drowned in. Exactly. It's just what a pointless way to die. And it's like, yeah, they're now going to display the magic bus that Chris died in a museum or something. Really
Well,
enough, Emil.
that's better. Just kids trekking to a museum will get less people killed.
I mean, yeah, that is good, but it's like I don't know. I want to junk the fucking thing because it's it's especially awful because apparently the abandoned VW bus that was there was used as a nature hide and for people who are genuinely lost in the woods to slide. So now that's gone. Thanks to these assholes. So, yeah, there's no way out of this situation that isn't shitty, and it could have all been avoided if we didn't give this, guy who died in the woods for preventable reasons, the mass attention that he got.
Did
I mean,
the couple thing in the wave of people going for the bus, did it happen after the movie or after the
oh,
article?
after the movie.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
definitely the fault of the I'm putting the fault squarely at the movie because of this. Because, yeah, the book was popular, but not nearly as popular as the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Look, Alex, it's all about love.
Oh, don't you fucking start. Oh god, that's the fucking thesis of this piece of shit movie. It really is. The whole thing. Oh, I mean, I'm getting completely off track because it just the
Oh,
more
yeah,
that
that's
we talk
segment.
about it,
Yeah.
I know, the more I talk about it, the more I get angry at it and more disbelieving that this thing was fucking made and that people actually died for this at best mediocre piece of shit film. Anyway, yeah. In short, he eventually makes the trip to South Dakota after he abandons his car by walking entirely with his backpack. And he scratches a living from any menial job he can find. He does a bit of restaurant work. He does harvesting grain. He works in McDonald's for a bit or Burger King. I can't remember.
Yeah, he's just playing the game.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's he doesn't stay in one place for too long. But in the meantime he does complete a lot of numerous cross-country hiking trips, including an illegal canoe trip down the Colorado River, which I mentioned. And they do have a scene. Like, they didn't have the scene where he goes "fuck the government," to Jim, but he has that scene of like, "What do you mean I can't kayak down the river? I have to wait like a year with permits? Isn't that ridiculous?" Audience looks directly at audience. Audience goes, "Yeah, that's
What next?
ridiculous."
You're gonna need a license to cross the road?
What, to drive?
To drive? To make tow?
Yeah, that's another thing I fucking hate about this movie. It's the libertarian mindset of it's like the man is getting him down. And you're like, all of the people who are telling him not to do stuff are always like stuffed shirts and like people saying, "No, sir, you can't do that. You can't do that." I'm not going to give a reason. I'm not going to give a reason why you can't do that, but you can't do that. I am the authority. I am the stand-in for the government who is mean for no reason. And like, there are definitely good reasons. Like, you need hunting licenses because of environmental devastation and because you don't want to shoot people in the face or have like unlicensed weapons. You can't just kayak anywhere because you might be polluting the environment. You could just like need a rescue team there because it's actually kind of dangerous. And he proves how fucking dangerous it is with this illegal canoe trip by almost getting killed, on his way to Mexico. And crossing the border again, like he's crossing the border as well. They go, "Well, that was very silly, wasn't it?" So you can't, like, this is like, I quote what they say in a very sort of tone that is like completely divorced from any immigration standards. When he actually does cross over from Mexico after it's a total failure, it's like, "Sir, you can't be crossing the border without documents. You silly sausage." I'm sorry, but if this guy was like a shade darker than white,
Oh,
which
yeah.
he is, like, he would have had the shit beaten out of him. Like, he does get the shit beaten out of him later for like riding on a train, and illegally, but that's it. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I don't know if that would, like, it would not happen now because in America because of like the extreme anti-immigration shit that they've got over there, but I doubt it would have happened like that. It's like he just walks out undocumented. Like, he just sees like a picture of fucking, I don't know, George Bush Sr. saying America, and that's bad somehow, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna take any documents anymore. That's enough reason for why I'm just gonna go hitch a ride on a train and get away from this situation." I mean, that I don't even know if that really was the exchange, um, in reality. That is how the movie portrays it, and it's just totally, it's just completely devoid from reality. Also, while he's on this canoe trip, a foreign couple is just invented into the script. Like, the foreign couple that, well, you get introduced to them by they're just dancing to Hammer Time, and there's close-ups of their face, while he's
Yeah.
canoeing around. And like you see, when they're out of shot, that the girl in question is topless and remains topless. The boobs are exposed for our pleasure.
What
And
just happened?
like, they're just there on his canoe trip. They're just hanging there, and they're invented. They're not in the book. They didn't exist in real life. Like, they're just there because the crew really like them. They like, to be fair, they're not unpleasant. They are like, they're kind of a funny duo. Like, they don't annoy me as much, but it's like they're there for tits and to remind us that we're in the 90s because they're dancing to Hammer Time. And they just show up on a bank where Chris is paddling his canoe illegally because fuck the government and their rules. And they serve no purpose other than to point on to a map of Mexico and say, "Yeah, we could go to Mexico together." And then there's like, "Woo woo, canoe police" in the distance, and then it's go, "Oh yeah, don't tell the police about me." And they're just like, "Fuck!" And then Chris fucks off in his canoe, well, kayak in the film for some reason, and he like,
Canoe pulley.
"Woo," and then like, and they go, "Yeah, we should go to Mexico together. We should go together, yeah. You're such a great guy, Chris. Bye." It's like the
I
fucking
want to
Room.
know what accent you're trying to do because I want to know whether I should be offended or not.
I don't know
German.
what accent they are. I guess they're German. I don't know what.
Okay, if you're doing a German accent, that's fine. You can make fun of the Germans.
I do a German accent. We
Please.
expose the blue. We're
Please
just fun loving.
stop
All right.
this.
Hey, it's
Stop
their
it.
accent. It's their accent. I'm sorry. Like, and that's it. That's all we see of them. Like, the only time we see them again in a flashback when Chris is like dying, like what they're going on. And honestly, they're living their best life. It seems like everyone else is just kind of sad that Chris has left them and like possibly dead. Whereas they're just fucking chilling in Vegas, like winning at a slot machine and going, woo! Like she's got a top on now, so that's fine. But yeah, they're
Fucking
just living their
chat.
best life. And I was like,
Fucking American virgins weeping and German Chad just partying in Vegas.
And it's the fact, like, if that happened in real life, like, I would be like, "Okay, that's why they, added that weird, jarring bit." But no, it was just totally invented because, like, the director and the rest of the crew really liked this German couple, and they just invited them on set to do a bit that has no relevance. And
Look, that's just the tree of life. A fair game. And this must be the place.
Alice,
that
what are you
everything-
trying to do? What is this bit you're trying to do?
Oh, the bit I've been doing for like the past 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, at this point I gotta ask.
I haven't noticed.
I'm just listing off things that Sean Penn's been involved in from the
Oh,
Wikipedia.
Oh! Oh, we didn't know you were playing this game.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm a dummy.
Honestly, it's crackers and risky business. You know?
Oh,
We're
will you
no
sto
angels.
stop! Stop! Oh, anyway. Anyway, yeah, that's, yeah, they never see each other again. That is, that's a scene that they invented and has no relevance in the film, but it's padding, so and we get to see tits, which is a bonus. Uh, yeah, and he makes friends with this old hippie couple as well, whose relationship he rekindles by giving them love advice. That didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if anyone's great at giving relationship advice, it's the guy who got into a scuffle with his parents and solved it by running away and dying in the wilds.
Also, like, another thing which I will come to later, like, he doesn't really show, much interest in forming long relationships, like, he flirted with someone once teasingly, like, this is a shitty thing, actually, he especially makes friends with a hippie girlfriend in this relationship, and, she thinks of him as she thinks of him like her missing son, but that's also not true, by the way, that's just a conceit of the film, like, she she doesn't think of him like a son, in any way. She likes him. Like, in reality, they'd had a fondness for him and saw him nice, intelligent lad who was, fun to be around. But it's more like a friendship than a family that worthy of all the tears shed over him, like the film implies. And he did a bit of playful flirting with the, hippie lady who was already in a relationship. But that was nothing serious, it was just more of a teasing thing, which is a dick thing to do, but it's not exactly a crime. But that's, like, the only sort of vaguely sexual thing that he is known to have done, which, I get that's important for a thing that I will be, coming to a bit
Oh.
later. Yeah, uh, Vince Vaughn is in this film. He's Wayne Westerberg, and he's the grain mill owner who employs Chris and takes him under his wing, and they become very good friends. And the last we see properly of Wayne is him getting arrested for selling black boxes on the black market, which is like they're things that unscramble television channels without having to pay the fees for,
Oh.
cable or satellite. Yeah, that's what the black boxes were about. I assumed it was drugs, but they don't make it very clear in the film. But yeah, basically he was jailed for piracy, and that's pretty random even by the standards of the film, but
Did that happen in real life?
that actually did happen in real life,
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm letting that go. I'm letting that one go because it seemed totally random and weird, and I didn't fully understand it in the film because they didn't really explain what black boxes were. I thought it was like hashish or something, but it wasn't. It was just like, piracy, basically. He was arrested for, and he just got a couple of months. It wasn't that big a deal. But yeah, that happened. Um, I'm going to talk about the thing that I mentioned before that really drives me up the wall. Kristen Stewart is in this film
Yay!
of Twilight fame. She plays Tracy, the compulsory hetero love interest for Chris. Now, this shit boils my blood because not only is this romance completely fictional, like it didn't happen, like Tracy as a character, in the book takes up like a sentence. Like that's it. It just says that this young girl had a crush on Chris and it was like she was far too young for him and it was completely unrequited and she ended up brokenhearted like, a little teenager. That's practically a non-story at all. It's just a little bit
Yeah.
of flavor, right? Now, she had a crush on him, but I mentioned that Tracy was 16 at the time, and the filmmakers thought it was a great idea to extend this little bit of lore into an entire seduction scene between the 23-year-old and a 16-year-old, and spin it into a heartfelt romance between the two. Yeah. It's
That's not good.
Not good, not good. It's creepy fan fiction, basically, because none of this happened. I want to point out that the filmmakers put this in to the movie. This is a choice.
Yeah, because
to do
everything,
this.
I guess, has to have a fucking romance subplot.
Oh, it's not just a romance. It's incredible. It's made even creepier by the old hippie guy that he's friend with, like encouraging him in the film. Like, why don't you talk to her? And whoo-wee, she about to voil over that pole for you.
Oh my
You know,
god.
he's like it just. And I assume that everyone fucking knows that she's 16 years old, and Chris is 23. So he is encouraging Chris to go and fuck this 16-year-old. Again, that never fucking happened. Like, that's just libel. That's libel. That what they did is like that. They're like, this guy is a pedophile, a pedophile enabler, and libeling poor fucking Tracy, who, God, imagine being fucking Tracy. All right, imagine being fucking Tracy, like seeing into the wild and saying, like, "Hey, I knew the real McCandless. Like, oh, cool. Like, oh yeah, I had a crush on him. It was so cringe. Oh my god. Like, I was just totally in love with him, but he said no, and it was like, ah. And then to see Kristen Stewart like lure Emil Hirsch into the trailer where she's just in her underpants and a little camisole, and just go, my parents are away today. Like, just looking at poor Tracy, watches like, did you do that, Tracy? Like, no! You sure, Tracy? It's in a movie. I mean, why did you do that, Tracy? It's so fucked up, like, that they've written that in.
Yeah.
And yeah, thankfully he says no to the sex that she's offering. They I hate the fact that they've done this as well, because like he states the only reason that's stopping him from fucking her is the fact that she's 16 years old. And you know what? That shouldn't just be the only reason. Like, oh, well, if it wasn't, if the age of consent was higher in this state, then ooh. Basically, I hate Sean Penn. I hate Sean Penn. I hate him for including this scene. There's no reason for the scene. It doesn't include it doesn't further the plot. It's creepy. It's entirely fictional. It's libelous. I don't know how they got away with including that, basically. Like, it just boggles my mind, and the only reason that they seem to, like, not fuck is because, Chris is in the film is sort of like, "Oh, you're 16, right?" And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid," like, ugh. And instead of, like, fucking, which they clearly want to do, but it's illegal, they sing a little song together, which, Kristen Stewart actually wrote, or co-wrote. It's awful. It's incredibly twee and awful. It's like it's only less worse than the implied paedophilia. It's just so bad.
If he was a real libertarian, he would have fucking said a lot about the age of consent at her.
I mean, that is one thing going for him. As far as we know, he wasn't a paedophile. Like, it was just like he
That
probably didn't
excludes
even
him from being
notice.
a true libertarian.
Yeah, like, like, here's something that I find really annoying. Like, you can't just have characters who are ace, you know? Like, it always has to be like, yes, they're heterosexual, they do the fucky wucky and stuff.
And it really doesn't matter in this movie. Like, it really shouldn't have been. Like I said, it goes fucking nowhere. Like, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's extrapolated from a single sentence, in the novel into this huge thing that goes nowhere. Like, none of these stories impact on his decisions, and he barely remembers them when he's dying. Like, but it has to be there to basically just, like, have him go through the chapters of this film of, like, "Yeah, I'm learning so much and having so many experiences," but none of them matter because he fucking dies through his own hubris. Like, all of the lessons that he's supposed to be learning on this journey and just all of these, truth bombs he's dropping and helping people, he doesn't take his own fucking advice, and the advice that he does take for himself kills him. It's Oh god, I hate this movie so much. Oh, and, like, there's, like, a final sequence, with an old man that he makes friends with, Ron Franz, which is mostly true, but it's heavily embellished, like, to the point of being mawkish. Like, the main thing they leave out is that Ron is in grieving for his dead family, wife, and his son is killed by a drunk driver. They mentioned that, but they don't mention that after quitting alcoholism, he actually did unofficially adopt many lost kids over the years, much like McCandless, to basically be a vent for, his paternal instincts, and to fill the void in his life met by his family. So the whole film portrays it like, Chris is like saving him from being a curmudgeon. He's this guy that just picks him up, and he's like the only guy that he's picked up, and he just teaches him about life as an old man and like gets him climbing a hill, literally, to say, "Come on, old man, you got to get out and move out, man." Like he already was in real life. Like he was just Chris wasn't special. He was just another lost kid that that Ron was adopting because, to fill the horrible void in his life left by his dead family, and because he was just such a nice guy and wanted to help a obviously insane, misguided kid, and yeah, I really hate that because like the whole movie makes it like it's kind of unreasonable. They're very like they do this whole spiritual thing, like the film makes it look a bit Chris Turn, just dropped some stone of wisdom on him and like this and now that Ron is a chill dude, he's dropping some religious revelations and the sun goes out from a cloud and that means something, which is like kind of and he talks about like forgiveness, like, oh, you gotta forgive people, to really sort of like live life or whatever. And that like echoes with him later. It's load of mawkish bullshit. And, like, when he finally, like, leaves to go into the wild and, like, Ron is trying to dissuade him from going into the wild because it's a stupid idea. Like, in the movie, he basically says, "You know what? Maybe we could just turn back and I could adopt you as my son. How about that?" And, considering that we don't know how long like, it is, it's only, like, a couple of weeks, I think, he spent with this guy, it just seems, like, awkward and stuff, and Chris is just, like, letting him down, you know, gently, as if it's a bit unreasonable. But, like, no, there wasn't any offer of that from Ron. He just did it, and he was like, "Well, you can stay at my place anytime, and just be nice." And, in real life, like, Ron did feel really bad, like, and did have a little cry when he found out that Chris died. But he didn't fucking offer to adopt him, like, then and there like a weirdo. Like, it's just sort of, like, elevating Chris to, like, sort of this Christ-like figure and saying, like, "No, no, I can't possibly. It is not my journey. My destiny is to die upon the cross in the magic bus." It seems like that's what it's trying to be, and really it's just, like, little anecdotes, really. Like, this is kind of the sadder part of the book for me and why I think it is better and more true to life than the film, is that a lot of these anecdotes like, Chris was well liked by the people that he met most of the time, but they are just anecdotes. Like, they didn't really know the real Chris, and they certainly didn't bawl their eyes out, offering him adoption. Like, he was just some guy, and that's who wanted to be, and it got the better of him. There wasn't any. Nobody knew where he was. No one. And I think if they didn't know, if he didn't become famous, they probably would have just forgotten about him. Like there was very little. If he didn't sign his name, on the note on the door where he died, like he could have just been forgotten forever. And I think that's kind of chilling. Like the film won't dare go that deep because, it's Hollywood, but yeah, that's something that's more dark. That's
Yeah.
actually what happened, yeah. Uh Meanwhile, Chris's family are going bananas at home. Uh with no word from their son. Even worse, they realize that he's intentionally avoiding them. Uh because he, covered his tracks by instructing the mailman to hold his mail for months. So like they wrote all letters to him asking where the fuck are you? Because he didn't have a phone. And yeah, he was giving them the runaround, and it just seemed like, yeah, it was kind of obvious that he didn't want to be found. And the police were just like, they found his abandoned car and basically convey that information like, that this kid doesn't want to be found. And they hired lots of private investigators. And again, they don't show that side of things because it's more dramatic to just have his family have a silent breakdown in the background while Chris is going on some awesome adventures. And again, that makes more sense when you realize what was actually going on. Like, I'll come to this bit actually. I might as well come to you know, the revelation now that came out much longer after the film and after the book. Uh, Chris's sister Corrine wrote another book about the living situation of the McCandless's family. And it's implied in the film. Apparently, the filmmakers knew about this. Like, she did tell them, but she told them to keep it out of the movie and out of the book in respect to the family, in the hope that they would change. They did not change. So, in about a decade or so later, she wrote a book saying they could go fuck themselves and just detailed all of the horrific verbal, physical, and sexual abuse that went on in
Oh
that
shit.
family. Yeah, and I'm not gonna go
Yeah.
totally into it, just let you know that it was awful, and it's way worse than anything that's shown in the film. It is truly horrific, and when viewed through that lens, it makes so much sense that Chris made these terrible decisions. His distrust of authority, his lack of
Yeah.
interpersonal relationships, the fact that, of just getting away from people, it makes so much sense when you view it through a lens of
Yeah.
trauma and using it as a cope to deal with, you know, all kinds of horrific abuse that was covered up. And of course the parents denied this as well. They just said, "Oh, that doesn't track." But like, why would she lie? And the fact that she actually this was something that the filmmakers and the author was aware of well before. Like, it's very clear. I don't have any reason to disbelieve her.
Yeah, this doesn't sound like a lie.
Yeah, it's that's a thing that made me change, a bit of opinion on the real life Chris. I haven't changed my opinion on the film because that's the thing, they knew this was going on, and yet they still portray it in a really shitty way. Like, they don't portray the parents as necessarily all good. Like, they are at least verbally abusive and physically abusive towards each other, but not the kids, and it turns out they were, you know, much worse towards the kids. Uh, but, uh, but they know that, and yet they still have this whole arc of, like, Chris forgiving his parents, like, in his hallucinations.
Oh, that's shitty.
Yeah, that lends that scene a whole
Oh, that's really shitty.
context now. Yeah. Yep. 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 No, no, Chris would not have forgiven his fucking parents considering all the shit
Yeah, the movie doesn't
that
get to,
happened.
like, make that decision for
No,
him,
no,
I
no,
guess.
no, no, exactly. They do not get to put
Yeah,
those
they
words in
they
Chris's
don't
mouth.
know what he thought about his family.
Well, considering what we know about Chris, fucking hated his family. Like
Oh, yeah.
he did like Kareen at least, but he fucking left her behind to get away from his family. That's how that's the opinion of his family as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned. Like, even people he loved, including his extended family. It also mentions casually in the movie that, his him and his sister were the product of a extramarital affair. Like, they were bastard children, and they were kept secret for quite a while 'cause, Chris's mother was, his father's secretary. And, yeah,
Oh.
he fucked his secretary, and he had an entirely different family, uh, and had
Oh.
6
Oh
children
shit.
in that family, and they were apparently very close. They toward when they actually found out about each other, they were quite close, with his half siblings, but for many years, like, it was like he was living a double life, like, he didn't want anybody to know about his 2 families, and it was a very messy divorce.
I mean, it wasn't just like he was living a double life, he literally was.
Yeah, he literally
That's pretty much
let
the definition of it, yeah.
it's not like that marriage made him happy because he was just like they were at each other's throats a lot. Even in the movie, as like vanilla as it sounds, it doesn't look like a happy marriage. But now knowing that they were constantly, physically and sexually abusing each other, it just lends a whole other layer to this film that
Yeah.
sort of yeah, I feel hollow talking about it really because it's like knowing that they knew about that and yet still decided to have this forgiveness arc. I mean, no
Oh,
wonder
that's
they I mean,
tough.
I can see why as well because there's no way that they were going to greenlight this film if they didn't have parental permission. And they did actually say that at the very end credits, you can see it like made with the support of the McCandless family. And it's like if they actually mentioned the full story from what we've seen
I
from their
mean,
behavior, the Mr.
they
and Mrs.
didn't
McCandless yeah, wouldn't want to,
yeah,
be
they didn't
portrayed as
even need to,
abusers.
like, mention that necessarily, just don't have him, like, forgive his parents at least, just
That's
don't
true, they could
mention it at all, like,
yeah, don't mention
if
it
we're
at all.
portraying it positively.
And yeah, I mean, they could have gone that route, as they could have gone that route as well, just not mention it at all, you know, and it would have been a much better film for it, and also it just wouldn't have the shitty abuse apologism where he's hugging his family in his mind at the end scene. That shit is just heartbreaking to me.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
disgusting.
as much as I dunk on Chris for his terrible decisions, I agree with Kareen when she said, "I don't blame my parents for Chris's death, but I do blame them for his disappearance." I think that
Oh,
that line absolutely stuck with me, and I completely agree. I think it's entirely on them for the shit that they put him through. Oh my god.
yeah,
Um,
Jesus, that was darker than I was expecting this to be,
yeah,
holy shit.
I'm so sorry. We were having a nice time. We're having a very nice time. And now it's uh now it's time for chapter 3, closing chapter called Nature Doesn't Give a Fuck.
Wait, is it really
Uh
called that in the movie?
no, that's not really no, it's probably called something like I don't know,
Oh,
Equinox or some
that would have
shit.
been much greater.
Yeah,
Much
I would
greater.
if I was making the movie, I would be like, nature doesn't give a fuck about you. Because I
Yeah.
think this is one of the things that the film just fundamentally doesn't understand. And what people don't understand about the film, like they've interpretations of the film I've been reading is sort of like, oh, Chris makes, this discovery that, nature is cruel and,
Oh, what? Really?
uncaring. Yeah, really.
What
And
an
I'm so
amazing
like, that's not
discovery!
and I'm like, no, like, first of all, that makes him sound more stupid because he has been living in the wilderness for 2 years, like, he does have some basic stuff. Actually, I'll go into, like, the thing that really fucked me off is, like, the speculation about his death in the film, which, first of all, the book isn't that great on it because it does speculate on, what he died of, which isn't responsible journalism. He had no proof that, Chris was poisoned. Uh, I mean, we later found out that Chris was likely sort of poisoned, but not from the poison that was initially speculated, like through like alpinum seeds. Like there was a scientific study done about their high levels of L-carnitine, which is an metabolite, and this was like in alpinum seeds, which is like potato seeds, and there's no real way of figuring that out, even if you are an expert wilderness person. but it's like if you eat a lot of this particular anti-metabolism thing, it like makes you, it affects your metabolism and you starve to death basically.
Huh.
And it's like that's like it is what it is. It's like there's no way that he could possibly know that. Like that's not really in most guidebooks. Most people don't, you know, survive on just like on seeds alone in these places. So there's no way that Chris could have even known that, even if he was prepared. But the movie makes him look so much dumber than what's actually happened. Like, even if we are going to like speculate about it, it's like his official cause of death was starvation, right? And there was many speculations like, oh, he just didn't find enough food to eat. You know, that's a possibility. You know, then we later find out that he could have been poisoned. He ate the wrong mushrooms, possibility. And now we find out that there's a particular chemical in the thing that he was eating that's, you know, virtually undetectable, you know, until you look at it under a microscope. And it's like, okay, you know, all possibilities. The movie, however, has it so that he reads the wrong piece of paper and
Oh, shit, yeah, I
confuses.
remember this.
Yeah, he reads the wrong piece of paper. He just like scribbles it down and he just like looks at it. Book that he's had since the beginning of his journey, by the way, that he's read dozens of times, perhaps thousands of times. He doesn't. He just reads the wrong page and he eats the poisonous potato plant and not the, you know, and not the not poisonous potato plant. Because he's a dumbass.
Amazing.
Like, brilliant. Like,
Wow.
I'm sorry, like, this whole film has been sucking his dick the whole time and, like, making him out to be Jesus Christ, and they give him this they just do him dirty at the last minute with this very rookie mistake
Yeah,
that
if they made him out to be Jesus Christ, they turned out to be Judas in the end. They can put it.
I'm sorry, at the time I read this, I'm like, "What the fuck? You've gotta be fucking kidding me." I'm like, "No one's that stupid. Even this piece of shit isn't that stupid. Even dying of starvation, he wouldn't be that stupid." And it's like, yeah, on one page it says poison, the other page, not poison. I'm like, "Oi." You know, no, I can't believe that anybody's that dumb. And like, yes, he went into the woods underprepared as well. Like he was going to die through, you know, the means of being so virtually underprepared, but he wasn't so stupid as to do basic mistakes like that. I'm sorry, movie. That's not a good way to close the film. And like, the way that they show it as well is also horrific. Like they don't shy away from like someone dying of poisoning. Like they show lots of shots of him having diarrhea down his leg. Oh yeah, and the bear comes into it at one point.
Bear.
Yeah, yeah. Remember the
There's
bear?
a
Like he's just
bear.
sort of crawling around with a kettle. Like again, you're like if it was half the film like that of him just like you know him just crawling around, basically trying to survive. You know when he's just dying.
At
You know,
least
and
less
so
people would have got into the wild and died after it.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I do think that's an element of it. Like, I mean, I do like the scene which is sort of comedic. I mean, it's not meant to be, but it's like I don't know if this happened in real life. We don't know if it's like a hallucination, but they have a bear um come up to Chris while he's starving. And the bear doesn't want him. He just like, you know, looks at him for a bit and then just like, I don't know, mistakes him for like, you know, a dead corpse that's standing and just walks away.
Yeah, this shouldn't even by my standards, mate. No, this is pathetic.
Nah, this is an idiot. I'm allergic to idiot. I'm fucking
Yeah.
off, you know?
I'm allergic to bullshit, yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna eat some campers down the flight. And also, like, another thing that's not mentioned in the film when he tries to ford that river, because he does actually want to leave. This is another thing in the film. He does, you know, learn a lesson by reading books that he's been reading for like, you know, since his college days. Again, I find that hard to believe that he just reads a bit of Jack London for the 100th time and realizes, huh, actually living in the wild is hard. I miss interpersonal contact. I can't believe he's that stupid. I'm
He
sorry.
finally got like to the like really depressing parts of Into the Wild and of Call of the Wild and just went, huh, maybe the wilds are not good. Probably should have finished this book earlier.
Wow, I'm really behind on my library fees. You know, he decides to go. I mean, I'm sorry. I find that so hard to believe that he is that dumb. Like, as much as I dunk on him, he's not. He wasn't that stupid. Okay, like he had some experience of living in the wild, and he understood what Jack London was talking about, and what Tolstoy was talking about. Like, come on. And basically, when he decides to like ford the river, the thing that they don't mention, like he does, is this really harrowing where the ice has melted and he can't ford the river anymore on his own, and that's his only way back. What they
Mhm.
didn't mention is that it turns out that if he had had a compass or a map, if he just had a decent map, he would have been aware that there was a hand-operated tramway that crossed the river like 400 meters away from where he was
Oh,
trying to cross the
Jesus
river.
Christ.
Like, yeah, it makes the makes that movie more of a farce if they included that, which is why they didn't include it. That salvation was literally just a short journey away. He could have survived if he had just bought a fucking map.
Jesus Christ.
I hate everything about this film. I've not watched it, but I hate everything about it.
Oh. Yeah, you see the very end, like he's dying of poisoning himself, and it's painful, and he's had diarrhea all over the place. It's not pleasant. They don't shy away from how awful it is, and he zips himself into, a sleeping bag to die. Essentially, he writes a little note which doesn't exist in real life. Says, "I've lived a long and happy life." No, he hasn't. That's apparently on his camera roll, where that line comes from, saying, "I've lived a long, happy life." And that was on his ruined camera, which he took ages ago. So that's another bit of framing from the film that changes the context. Like, he didn't say that when he was dying. He said that before he was dying. And yeah, he zips himself into the sleeping bag and he looks at the sun, and it's like echoes that scene that he had with Ron earlier, where he's having a religious experience, and he imagines all of the people he's met, and he imagines running into the arms of his parents, who Sean Penn knows to be abusers, but we don't know as the audience. Uh, and he just sort of smiles, cries that the sun is coming out. He takes his last breath. And the movie fucking ruins it by having him look out the window with a massive smile on his face, fucking dead, and it pans outward, playing Hard Sun by the lead vocalist of Pearl Jam, as if and going into a wide angle shot that we've seen so many times, wide angle shots of a beautiful countryside, as if the movie is saying, you know what, yeah, it ended badly, but he lived a life.
He's happy. He's happy.
He's happy because he was in the wild, and he died where he loved, in the wild, and he forgave his parents in his
In the
mind.
wild.
In the wild. So it's okay, folks. You don't have to feel sad. You don't have to feel that it's pathetic and pointless to die in the wild. It's actually okay. Fuck you, movie. Fuck you, movie. That's
Yeah.
the worst fucking ending. Like, knowing everything else about it, that's what really pissed me off. And I think that's the thing that gets people to thinking that actually it's a good idea to go to the magic bus and risk their lives, because it's sort of like, well, even if we do have hardships and if we do risk our lives, at least we'll die happy in the wild. And I'm like, here's my fucking takeaway. Nature doesn't give a fuck about you. It
Yeah.
doesn't give a fuck about your feelings. It doesn't give it's not cruel. It is not kind. It is just nature. It is an environment. It doesn't have an opinion on you.
Survivalist Ben Shapiro going, nature
Yeah.
doesn't care about
Yeah,
your
fuck
feelings.
your feelings. Yeah. Exactly. And you know what? If that discourages people from going into the fucking wild, so be it. Let's just call them Shapiros from now on, so that people don't make these ridiculous. Look, I live in the countryside, okay? And I've lived in the countryside all my life, and I don't have this whole nature being romantic. Nature is beautiful. Nature is important. Nature is interesting. But loving nature isn't the same as understanding nature, and you should understand nature. Don't fucking go into the wild with no supplies with these romantic notions.
All right, I'm coming in. Suburbia splaining. Nature awful. Nature bad. Don't go into nature at all, actually. It sucks.
Yeah,
It's
it
awful.
sucks. That's why we developed it inside, because it's
Yeah.
better than outside. Like,
Yes,
come on.
exactly.
And I wouldn't feel so bad about all this if people didn't legit die because of this movie. Like,
Yeah.
at least 15 people have died, and to the point
Oh,
where
shit,
they had
15?
yeah, about 15 people have died. I think that some people have gone missing, and a lot more people had to be rescued. I think that's the number. Like, from last count. I mean, yeah, I don't blame the Alaskan authorities for taking away the magic bus because they're just tired of they're just so tired of like dealing with these asshole tourists, these fucking deaf tourists, these LARPers just coming in and just basically, fucking up the wilderness that they love so much. Because they have to expend all of these resources and pollute the rivers with their corpses. All because, this movie is a lie. It's lying to you. And it's not even that good a movie. So why would you die for not only a lie, but a mediocre film? It's crazy. Anyway, I've taken up way too much time.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. It's all good.
Edit
Alright.
that into something comprehensible.
Hey everyone, it's Lee here, and only Lee here again, which means we once more went very overboard and accidentally did another two-parter. So in part 2, we'll be talking about 2 more movies. We got King Charles III, a baffling speculative fiction drama, which among other things features a civil war, the ghost of Princess Diana, and kebab store conversations about living in a society. We've also got Pain and Gain, a lowbrow action comedy in ridiculously poor taste, where Michael Bay adapts the real-life story of a heinous kidnapping torture case with even less grace and respect than you'd expect him to. That'll be up on Thursday next week, so please do stay tuned for that. If you liked this episode, please rate, comment, and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, you might want to ring the little bell there to turn on notifications so you know when the next part's up. Now, until next time, folks, have a good one, and try not to starve to death in the middle of any forests, alright? Ciao!
Society, man.
Society!
Society. Society.
Society!
Society. Society.